school counselors, nurses of Reddit. What is the most embarrassing or WTF reason a kid has ended up in your office? When I was in 2nd grade, a boy held a pencil point up on my chair, and I sat on it. It traveled through my jeans and underwear without any damage, and stuck firmly in my little butt cheek. On this day, we happened to have a substitute teacher, and when I started crying, she took me into the in-classroom restroom and looked at my butt, informed me that the tip of the pencil was stuck in there, and I took off running and crying down the hall. I turned a corner and the janitor, Ralph, called out, "Do you have a pass?" To which I replied, "There's a pencil stuck in my butt." Then I continued down the hall to the nurse's office. The school nurse, Sherry, was a very sweet lady. She calmed me down, called my mom to ask for permission to touch my butt, and plucked it out. I got to go home for the day. I consider it a win. I laughed so hard during the hallway janitor moment that actual tears were shed. A boy in my 7th grade class snorted a line of sugar he poured from a pixie stick. He promptly got a severe nosebleed that would not stop, and he had to go to the nurse's office, and he was there until his mum could pick him up and take him home. For some reason, a fair number of girls started doing this in the bathroom during junior high. They'd all go in there during lunch and just snort pixie sticks. Middle school counselor here. Not really WTF, but a 7th grader came to see me in tears because she thought she might be pregnant. After some discussion, I realized that she had given a handy and thought she could get pregnant from getting semen on her hands. We have a student, 1st grade, who poops his pants on purpose when he wants to go home, about once a week. My sister used to wet herself to get taken home. It took a few times for my mom to figure it out. One day, she pees herself. Mom comes up there with a change of clothes, changed her in the bathroom and sent her right back to class. She never did it again. I put my hand through a window in high school trying to kill a bug on the window. When I got to the nurse, she was like, "Sweet, nothing like this ever happens." In 3rd grade, a boy punched through a window because he left his watch at the French fry factory during a field trip. I bet that was a fun one to explain. We had about 5 kids, 5th graders, come in one day after lunch because one of the other kids brought a habanero pepper and convinced them all to try it. You'd think they would learn after the first one did it. Nope. Even adults are that level of stupid. My buddy is in his late 50s. His wife packed his lunch for work and included some god-awful sparkling water. Buddy takes a big gulp and exclaims this is disgusting. His buddy, mid-40s, then demanded to taste it. Within 10 minutes, all 8 grown adults in the room had tried it. When I was in grade 9, we were reenacting battles from wars with marshmallow ammunition in the schoolyard, and somebody whipped a marshmallow right into my open eye. This sounds like the wimpiest injury ever, and it really was, but it hurt and I couldn't open my eye or see. I had to go to the nurse and explain that the black eye I was getting was from a marshmallow, and she had to do like an eye rinse to get out all the powdery sugar. She even called my mom and they just laughed at me. My mom is a school nurse. One day, after the school day ended, she was about to leave when someone came to get her about an emergency. A student needed something from his locker in a sports locker room. The door was locked. He decided he would crawl into the ceiling, over the door, over the locker room, drop down from the ceiling, get what he needed, and crawl back out through the ceiling. The kid fell through the ceiling before he could make it inside the locker room. My son's middle school had a really skittish nurse. I am not sure what her qualifications were, but she called for an ambulance about twice a week. My son is asthmatic and had a complicated regimen back then. This woman just couldn't handle it for some reason. So we had to have my son take his meds right before and right after school, and he had to smuggle in his inhaler. But he never got flack for that until the end of his 2nd year there. One day, he hit his head in shop class. Not bad, but they sent him to the nurse. She calls me at work and says I had to pick him up. I told her to call my wife, who worked from home and was 5 minutes away. She couldn't process that and said no, I had to pick him up. I said that was silly. I was at least an hour away, and why my wife was primary contact. She said she didn't answer the phone. I sent an IM to my wife, and she said she hadn't gotten a call. So she called the school. The nurse insists that if I am anything of a responsible father, I was to be there in 10 minutes or she's sending my son to the hospital. WTF. I am an hour away. My wife can be there in 5 minutes. So my wife gets through, and the nurse speaks to her. I forgot what led to this, but my wife ends up in a fight with the nurse who refuses to tell her about why her son was being sent to a hospital. So my wife says she'll be there in 5 minutes to sort it all out. The nurse considers this a threat to her life and calls the cops. So my wife is met at the school nurse office by the police and EMTs because the nurse called an ambulance. During this, an EMT calls me because the nurse is dealing with my wife and the cops. He says my son is fine, just a little freaked out because some woman claiming to be my ex-wife or something is being accused of threatening bodily harm to the nurse. In the end, no one was arrested, and my wife sent my son back to class. My wife said the nurse was so crazy, the cops pretty much took my wife's side right away, but she was no longer allowed on school grounds because the vice principal was also crazy and scared of my wife. The next time my son was in the nurse's office, he was caught with his prescribed inhaler. I had to come pick it up right away because it was an unauthorized potential explosive contaminant. I got the call walking my dog, and the school was 5 minutes away, so I just went right over. Oh man, the second that nurse saw my Pekingese, she flipped the frick out, said it was a dirty dog, and some kid allergic to dogs could die, and wow, she wouldn't even get near me and had an office aide hand me the inhaler. That woman was crazy. We were dissecting rats in 9th grade and bet a kid that he wouldn't eat the rat's balls for $30. He did. He had to be taken to the hospital to get his stomach pumped because the rat's balls were covered in formaldehyde. I got sent to the nurse once for getting quarters stuck up my nose. Some kid bet me that I couldn't fit 3 quarters up my nose. He was wrong. Never considered how I'd get them out. One winter in junior high, my classmates engaged in running across a frozen pond for kicks and giggles. One of them decided he would run across barefoot, and suckily for him, the ice decided to break under his bare soles. Needless to say there were cuts and blood all over, and since our school's nurse was on lunch break, our maths teacher had to carry him to a nearby school where they could tend to him. You know how your teachers would always yell at you when you tilted your chair back because they once had a kid bust their head open after falling? Yeah, I'm that kid. Me too. Except I didn't bust my head open. I knocked out my 2 front teeth. Blood everywhere. Our art room was directly above the shop room, both on an exterior corner of the school. For some reason, the shop exhaust tube was turned upside down one day, making it vent directly into the art room's intake. The counselors were perplexed when they had a room full of sick and loopy students. They accused us of all getting high, and we were all sent back to the art room, until even the teacher presented with the same symptoms. I think all we did was sit outside for a bit, then we all continued on with our day in other classrooms. Gassing the creative members of society. It's an attempted power grab, I tell you. I'll throw myself in here. Not a nurse but the embarrassing kid. I grew up with a dairy allergy, not lactose intolerance, like an actual allergy where I was told that my throat would close and eyes swell up, or it did the couple times when I was much younger. Was pretty vigilant about not eating dairy so I don't have an actual memory of a reaction. Well, second day of my freshman year, I bought a sub and checked it for cheese, ate half of it before I realized there was white Swiss on it. I freaked out and went to the office and told them. They called an ambulance and my parents rushed there, and it turns out I've definitely grown out of the allergy. 10 years later and my friends still harass me about the time I got scared by a sandwich and called an ambulance. Still embarrassed about it every time. If you weren't wrong though, they'd still be talking about that guy in high school who got killed by a sandwich. A guy in one of my HS Chem classes tried sneaking some sodium, if I remember right, out of the classroom. He unfortunately decided he would hide it in a paper towel in his crotch. He eventually sweated enough to activate it and ended up burning his crotch pretty badly. School had to call an ambulance. Not entirely the same thing, but in my freshman Gen Chem lab someone managed to stick a glass funnel all the way through their hand. He had been trying to fit a hose around it and accidentally stabbed himself with it. It didn't help that his was somewhat chipped at the end, making it sharper. They ended up having to call an ambulance. It was rather gory. Lab was cancelled though. I guess one man's misery is another man's fortune. Carol didn't wear her safety goggles. Now she has a hole through her hand. In my high school Gen Chem lab we had about 10 students, one of which got his fingers stuck in a wooden test tube rack. He hid that hand behind his back for a good amount of time before our lab teacher noticed and asked why he was doing so. He ended up having to have the jewelry teacher in the classroom next door saw it off. Not a counselor, but one time a group of boys streaked at a homecoming game. At the time, our football field had a crappy wire fence around it. So, when they made it across the field to the fence, 2 of them made it over. The third left part of his ball sack stuck to the fence. I reached for my non-existent balls as I read that. Holy crap. Edit. Second highest voted comment is about having balls. I don't. Of course, my highest voted comment is about the G-spot. So, I guess I see who Reddit really is. LOL. Well, when I was in year 9, a student tried to kill himself in and during a lesson. This was a serious attempt, by strangling himself with his own hands, in front of the teachers and all of us, leaving us wondering WTF he was doing. Well, I was a student. One time I had hickeys and the nurse police thought I was getting abused. Called my parents and everything. One time I had to go to the nurse's office at school because I had a ring-shaped bruise around my mouth and the teacher and nurse thought I was being abused. What really happened is that I got a cup stuck on my mouth by sucking all the air out of it the night before while I was taking a bath. I had a friend who cut himself pretty deep with scissors. He proceeded to try to see how many pieces of .7 lead he could stick into his body. He got about halfway through one piece when it broke inside him and he had excruciating pain which he described as a burning and stinging. We were only in middle school, and he went to the school nurse who tried to squeeze it out of him and then just assumed it had entered the bloodstream and left him alone. My ex got his dong stuck in his zipper and the nurse had to help him unzip. Cringe. We did a starfish dissection in 7th grade and this guy in my class ate the starfish for $10 and never asked him how it tasted. We dissected a deer heart in 10th grade. A kid took a huge bite out of one for $17. He got suspended. The video went crazy around school and they tried to get people in trouble for having it. One time in 6th grade I was playing with scissors in my art class and cut my bottom lip. I put my hand to my lip instantly out of fear and it was covered with blood. I walked up to the teacher, who was in the process of scolding some kid for doing something stupid with the art supplies, and when he turned to me he was so frustrated he said, "You better be bleeding." I showed him my lip. He just shook his head and said go to the nurse. I still have a little U-shaped scar on the bottom of my bottom lip from that incident. We dissected a pig in biology in high school and a guy stuck his scalpel up its throat and was walking around the classroom quoting lines from Lord of the Flies. Needless to say he got suspended for it. In 2nd grade I went to the nurse's office with a good-sized hole in my ear. I fell while running to the bathroom and slammed my head into the corner of a filing cabinet. The nurse had no idea what to do, so she put dry gauze on the hole. Later it became very apparent that that was a bad idea. I have one involving both counselors and nurses. I have very well documented allergies to things like peanuts and pet dander and dust mites and fabric softener and anything that flowers. So, basically, I am always having some kind of allergic reaction. My school had a zero tolerance policy, so I had to go to the nurse and ask politely for my allergy medication on the relatively frequent occasions I would break out in painful hives. After realizing I was doing this, the school counselor started intercepting me to interrogate me about why I was trying to get out of class, what was really bothering me, and if I had found some clever new way to get high. The phrase, "No, really, look at these nasty hives all over my arms" meant nothing to her. She eventually called my allergist to ask him hypothetically if it was possible for me to have reactions this frequently, then called my parents and suggested they consider taking me to a psychologist, because it might be psychosomatic. It wasn't. My immune system is just crap. I was sent to detention, which inevitably also meant seeing the counselor for misbehaving in grade 7. My crime? I didn't stand up when I was told to. I was in a wheelchair. The counselor thought I was lying when I got to his office when I told him what happened, so kept me on detention. I got home, told my mum. She lawyered up and had him write a letter that scared the crap out of the principal so much I never saw that teacher or the counselor ever again. I'm not sure if kids just pound the common sense out of these people or they are just morons. WTF. In my freshman biology in high school there were 2 kids who were throwing sharp dissecting objects at the ceiling while the teacher was out of the classroom to get them lodged in the ceiling, like people do with pencils sometimes. During our frog dissections and one of the kids accidentally stabbed the other one with a scalpel in his shoulder. The kid who got stabbed got pee and punched the other kid and they both ended up going to the nurse. I thought it was pretty WTF. Sounds like a great school. I was a school nurse. The saddest ones are the ones that have to be sent to my office, then home, repeatedly for head lice. The parents often don't give a crap. Sometimes the only solution is to have the kids shave their heads. Those kids are so embarrassed. When I was in the principal's office in elementary school, some first grader was brought in because he had peed all over the walls of the bathroom. Like, the whole thing. In the animal kingdom, the bathroom is now. Not a nurse. One day I decided that my bully had enough fun with me, so I dumped crazy glue into his hands and told him it will make your hair gleam. Once he put his hands into his hair, Insta-stick. He spent 3-4 hours with the nurse cutting his hair. He didn't come back to school for 3 weeks. When I was in first grade, my parents bought me some ridiculous costume jewelry and I decided to wear a flimsy metal ring, comparable to what you'd get from a gumball machine, to school one day. For some dumb reason, I decided to stick my entire finger in my mouth and bite down on the ring while it was on my finger. It would bend from my biting it, and I thought it was cool and interesting. When I finally realized that this might have been a foolish thing to do, I had bit down on the ring so much that I couldn't get the ring off. We had a substitute that day that seemed really mean, so I was afraid to say anything to her. So, I kept biting down on it, hoping that I could somehow bend it back to its original state and I'd be able to get it off. Wrong, I ended up biting down on it so much that it crimped down on my finger. I still didn't want to say anything to the teacher for worry of getting in trouble, so I just kept messing with it, making it worse. After about 15 minutes and developing a cold, purple, dying finger, I finally freaked the heck out and burst into tears. The teacher was surprisingly nice about my little problem and sent me to the nurse. The school nurse dunked my hand in ice water and then would try to yank it off. It didn't work, but I think the ice water bath kept me from losing my finger forever, and after a half hour, she called my mother. My mom is not one who's great in a crisis and freaked out as much as 6-year-old me did. She called my dad while he was at work. She drove me there, and he cut the ring off with some bolt cutters or nipping pliers in about 3 seconds. I cried because I felt so dumb, and he felt bad that I felt bad, so he bought me an ice cream cone from Thrifties and got to skip out on school for the rest of the day. TLDR. Almost docked my own finger off like a puppy dog's tail while in school. Dad saved the day and I got cookies and cream and a day off as a reward for being an idiot. In middle school, some kids in my home ec class were suspended for sprinkling weed on the pizzas they were making. It was oregano, I swear. Got a ball bearing stuck in my ear in high school. Went to the nurse and it was deep enough that she couldn't find it. Ended up calling my mom and she got it out in the school parking lot with a big magnet. Still got to go home for the day so it was worth it. Yeppy, magnets. You know those round metal things with bars so that kids can climb all over them? I slipped on one and landed with a bar hitting my balls. I had to go to the nurse and hold an ice pack on my balls until my mom picked me up from school. Once saw a kid snort ghost pepper powder. Powerdy stuff. Got a wicked bad nosebleed and cried for 2 hours. That kid was an idiot. In 5th grade a friend of mine said his whiteout smelled like blueberries from being next to a blueberry scented eraser. After I smell it I passed it to another friend to smell it. That said friend complained about a headache from sniffing whiteout and next thing I knew I was suspended for 2 days and I needed to write an essay explaining why I shouldn't inhale or huff whiteout because it could lead to hard drugs. In my senior year of high school, I sliced one of my fingers, left ring, on the soft underside, almost in half lengthwise with an X-Acto. Blade moments after my art teacher warned us to be careful because two freshmen accidentally stabbed each other in the butt first period. I sat there for an hour trying to secretly stem the bleeding with the paper towel help of the friends in my desk group. When I finally admitted what I'd done, the school nurse said she couldn't help me and was about to call 911 for an ambulance, which I thought would be a spectacular waste of a couple $1,000, so I drove myself. But because I didn't take an ambulance, I wasn't admitted right away and sat there bleeding for another 3 hours. Lost a lot of blood and got 11 stitches. Still have a scar. If it's any consolation, you probably would have been stuck waiting even if you'd come in by ambulance. Ambulance transport equals skipping the line at the air. Source: have delivered patients directly from my stretcher to seats in the waiting room. Well, I feel like this fits here somewhat, so I will throw it in. I took a lot of art classes in high school, but so did a lot of buttholes who just wanted an easy A. One such butthole sat across from me, was well known for being a troublemaker, and decided one day it would be cool to throw an X-Acto knife at me. It stuck in my leg. There was only one nurse for 3 schools in the district. Needless to say, I dealt with it myself. Had a few guys like that in high school. They rode by in a truck one day throwing snowballs at us. We got in a bigger truck and chased them with Louisville sluggers. We just wanted to play ball. I once got sent to the principal in 5th grade because I went to the nurse after hurting my knee in gym, but the teachers thought that I was there to cheer on a friend who had gotten into a fight that I didn't even know happened. Turns out my principal thought that she knew everything about every individual kid because she took a class about child development. The same principal also accused me of insubordination because I was wearing the same coat as the offender. Found out it wasn't me, and still gave me a detention. TLDR. My principal was a power-tripping C, who got me a ridiculous number of detentions and counselor trips for an elementary school student. Edit. This was a recurring thing throughout grade school between us. The same principal also accused me of insubordination because I was wearing the same coat as the offender. Found out it wasn't me, and still gave me a detention. My brain hurts. Well, stupid male kid here. In preschool when I was around 4, I told the teachers I had PMS. They thought that crap was great. They made me call my mom and tell her while they all stood around laughing. Turns out I had seen some commercial about some PMS relief pill and asked my mother what PMS was. She told me it was when you get headaches, your stomach hurts and you don't feel good. Well, my head ached, my stomach hurt, and I didn't feel good. So obviously, PMS. I got sent to the school counselor for playing ankles with my buddy. For those of you that don't know, the game of ankles consists of 2 simple rules. 1. Pull your pants down to your ankles. 2. Whoever pulls their pants up first loses. I have never seen a more confused look on my principal's face than when he caught us, and to top it all off, I lost. Not a counselor or nurse, but I can honestly say I ended up in the nurse's office in the 8th grade because I had a mousetrap stuck to my head. One of the extremely sticky kind. Some kid slapped it on my head hair as a joke and I nearly ripped my scalp off trying to remove it. I subsequently landed in the counselor's office. Double win. I had a 1st grader stick a bead up his nose while at recess. The nurse's office was a small, sterile, closet-sized room. She told him to hold the other nostril and blow for all it was worth. Ping, ping, ping. That thing popped right out and bounced all over the room. He told that story all year long. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.